Hello, my name is Theran Fisher, and I'm the Director of Talent and Organizational Effectiveness at the University of Richmond. And I want to talk to you about change. It may sound cliche, but it's certainly true that change is the only constant. Whether it's personal or professional, large or small, we are all experiencing change all the time. So today, I want to provide you with a framework to help you think about and manage the change in your life. And I'd also like to talk to you about what is perhaps the most difficult aspect of dealing with change: ambiguity. The framework that I'd like to share with you regarding managing change is entitled Managing Transitions, developed by William and Susan Bridges. I like this model and think it's helpful in managing change because it recognizes the three distinct steps that we all must go through, both logically and emotionally, in order to make change successful. In the Managing Transitions model, the Bridges use the example of an acrobat flying through the air, swinging from one trapeze to the other. In order to be a successful acrobat, certain things must happen. First of all, you need to let go of the trapeze bar that you're currently hanging on to. Secondly, you need to gracefully fly through the air. And lastly, you need to successfully grasp the second trapeze bar in order to land safely. This is not at all unlike change. That first trapeze bar that you must hang on to and then eventually let go of is what the Bridges refer to as endings. Endings are those things that we say goodbye to in the change process, our current way of being that is soon going to be our old way of being. It could be a procedure or process. It could be a social network that we're actively engaged in. It could be a location that we currently live and work. There are lots of things that can end during change, but in order for change to be successful, we have to let go of that which is ending. Next, we find ourselves reaching and striving towards new beginnings. The change that's actually taking place, the new process and procedure, the new social network that we're going to become a part of, or the new locations where we're going to live and work. However, in order to get from one trapeze bar to the next, to get from endings to new beginnings, we have to experience the most uncomfortable and even dangerous part of the change process. And that is what the Bridges refer to as the neutral zone, when we are simply flying through the air. The neutral zone can be scary for individuals. We've left our old way of being or our endings. We haven't quite reached our new beginnings yet, and we seem to just simply be floating aloft without any safety net beneath us. However, a lot of growth and transition takes place in the neutral zone. And I'd like to share with you some tips to not only help you let go of endings more naturally and comfortably, but to safely transfer through the neutral zone and make the most out of your new beginnings. Often in the change process, we tend to try and move as quickly as we can from endings through the neutral zone to new beginnings. That's a natural drive to try and seek stability and comfort. However, as the Bridges Transitions model shows us, there's a tremendous amount of benefit in taking the time to mark and celebrate endings, to embrace the neutral zone and make the most of it, and to be thoughtful about engaging in new beginnings. For example, when experiencing endings, there are several actions that we and others can take to help make the transition process a little easier. First of all, it's important to identify who is losing what. Often in change, we don't think about the individual impacts on each and every party that's affected. But it's important to not only recognize the individual loss that people are experiencing, but also to call out what it is exactly that's being lost. For some of us, it may be small things that are important to us, but may go unseen by other people. For others, it may be large, drastic change that's easy to just try to brush aside and move past. In acknowledging these losses openly, we can not only accept their reality, but also their importance. But along the process of identifying what's being lost, it's also important to identify what isn't changing, what hasn't been lost as we leave an ending. In doing so, we can identify what it is we're able to still hang on to, what can bring us comfort, and what will continue as we go through the neutral zone, and into new beginnings. Of course, it's important to mark that which is ending with respect. We shouldn't just forget about the past and march boldly into the future. We should also recognize that which is changing, that which will never be again, and that which people are quite rightfully mourning. And in doing this, we can mark endings. That celebration of an ending will look different for different folks, but it's important to take at least a few moments to recognize and acknowledge what is changing and to thank that process, that procedure, whatever it may be that we're saying goodbye to for all it's done for us in the past. As we say goodbye to that which is ending, we move into the neutral zone. And while it can be scary and we may have an urge to move as quickly as possible through the neutral zone, it's important to take our time. Use that time in the neutral zone to be creative, and we should encourage experimentation. We've said goodbye to the way we used to do things, but we haven't quite gotten to the new way of doing things yet. So now is a natural time to try different ways of getting the same results, and that experimentation can lead to ultimately better outcomes. There should be a focus on temporary systems and short-term goals during the neutral zone. Again, we don't want to rush too quickly to new beginnings and putting everything into permanence. This is a chance for us to play around, try new things, and experiment with different ways of getting things done. And this, of course, ties into the resist to push for closure too soon. Often when we try and get out of the neutral zone too quickly, we set up new systems that won't be effective in the long run. So we want to embrace the neutral zone, embrace that discomfort, and make sure that we're working on processes that'll get us through in the short term until we find out what's best for the long term. In any change process, at any stage of the change, communication is key. However, this is never more true than during the neutral zone. When folks are experiencing cognitive dissonance and are feeling lost, it's impossible to over-communicate. And we need to communicate in different modes, not just written or oral. We also need to think about all the ways that we can communicate important messages to stakeholders. And of course, we need to watch out for the signs of resistance that inherently come up during the neutral zone, such as high anxiety, low motivation, or polarized thinking. When people start to experience these signs in the neutral zone, they're more likely to try to retreat back to that which is already ended, rather than push forward into the new beginnings. And of course, once we've safely navigated through the neutral zone to our new beginnings, it's natural to feel a sense of relief and to think that we've finally gotten to a new normal and can just move ahead. However, we need to take certain steps to make sure that the new beginnings take root and will continue to be effective. One is to clearly explain the purpose, to start with why, as Simon Sinek would say, and to help folks understand why we are engaging in these new beginnings, how they're going to benefit us, and how they are an improvement upon that which we've already said goodbye to. And this involves sharing a clear and compelling vision for the future. Individuals naturally want to understand where they're going, what they're trying to achieve. And so by painting that clear picture of what you're working towards, folks are more likely to get on board and embrace the new beginnings that are part of the change process. However, some folks need help understanding what it is they can do to embrace the new change process. And so clearly defining ways that people can contribute and take positive action towards reaching that clear and compelling vision are always important. Whenever we engage in new behaviors, we're going to make mistakes. And we're going to have a tendency when things get hard to retreat to old behaviors. So we want to make sure that we reinforce new behaviors and new beginnings with consistency. We want to make sure we don't slip up and go back to our old habits. We want to continue to engage in the new practices that come with new beginnings, and we want to encourage others to do the same. And just like we want to mark endings when we're in the endings part of transitions, we want to make sure that we celebrate successes when we're engaging in new beginnings. Large or small, successes should be recognized so that folks know they're on the right track and making progress towards that clear and compelling vision that we've already articulated. By engaging in these actions when we're going through transitions, we can make sure that we not only limit the anxiety that people feel, but we ensure that the transition is going to be more successful. When things get hard, sometimes it's natural to dig in and stick where things are now. to engage in current behaviors because we're fearful to say goodbye to them and move forward. Or we might want to simply rush through the change as quickly as possible and get to that new normal in the new beginnings phase. However, as you can see here, it's beneficial for us to take the time to move through these three distinct phases with purpose so that we can not only make sure the change is effective and long-lasting, but to help ourselves and those around us get through the change as safely and as comfortably as possible. Hopefully you found some value in the Bridges Managing Transitions model. As you saw, it moves through the three stages that every change entails: letting go of our endings, moving through the ambiguity of the neutral zone, and arriving at our new beginnings. While the Bridges model offers a lot of great tips on managing the neutral zone and the ambiguity that comes with it, I want to share some additional tips with you. For as Scott Belsky said, we all must accept the burden of processing uncertainty. When dealing with ambiguity, there are lots of things we can do to help ourselves and those around us feel more comfortable. We may not be able to erase all ambiguity in the change process, but we can certainly minimize its effects. First of all, take the time to identify what you already know. Instead of getting spun up and feeling like information is being withheld from you, take the time to identify what information you already have and what it tells you about the change process. Chances are you know more than you think. However, for that information that you don't have, seek answers. Talk to colleagues, your manager, or if it's a personal change, reach out to friends and family and try and get answers to what it is you don't already know. If there's the opportunity to get involved in the change process, I highly encourage you to do so. Become part of a committee or work stream that's engaged in managing the change. Become an advocate for the change or a change champion, or just simply be proactive in enacting the change in your own life, whether that be your work life or your personal life. It's also important during times of change to give yourself and those around you time and a little sense of grace. The change process isn't easy, and folks move through it at their own pace. So give yourself time. Additionally, change requires us all to engage in new behaviors. And whenever we engage in new behaviors, we're going to make mistakes. It's going to take more mental and physical energy, and it's going to take more time. For instance, imagine if for the rest of the day, I asked you to use your non-dominant hand to write, to move your mouse, to open doors, to take a sip of water, whatever it may be. Use your non-dominant hand. You could certainly do it, and you would ultimately be successful. However, it would take more mental thought and energy to engage in those actions with your non-dominant hand. It would certainly take more time, and chances are the outcomes would be poorer. You'd have mistakes. The same is true with any new behavior we try. And one of the hallmarks of change is engaging in new behaviors. So we have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes. We have to allow ourselves and those around us more time to get familiar with these new behaviors. And quite simply, we need to grant each other a little bit of grace. Now, as we're dealing with ambiguity and swimming around in the neutral zone of change, it's important that we find alternate routes to success. This is what we are referring to with temporary systems and short-term solutions to problems. We can't continue to do things the way we were, and we quite haven't figured out how to do things in the new way yet. So we need to find alternate routes, experiment, get creative, find ways to achieve results. And it's also important when dealing with ambiguity to take on smaller and more ambitious projects. We don't need to invest in a long-term project in the middle of a change. We should probably work on something a little smaller. And it's a great time to take on something that's more ambitious because we're already thinking creatively and taking new risks. So why not try that new project that you've been putting off? And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we need to be honest with each other. We need to be open about what we're feeling and experiencing during the change process. And again, we need to communicate. We need to share what we know, ask for answers to what we don't know, and communicate what we're feeling and experiencing as we go through the neutral zone and are experiencing high ambiguity. Now, there's no guarantee that engaging in these actions will ensure that your change is 100% successful. A lot of changes aren't. But by engaging in thoughtful behaviors around endings, the neutral zone, and new beginnings, we can ensure that we have a beneficial change experience and that we learn from it and can apply that learning to future change. Hopefully today you've learned a little something that'll help you deal with whatever change you're currently facing. Better yet, it might give you some tips and tricks on how to help other people as they are going through a change. As a new graduate of the university or a young alumni, your life is full of change. Leaving campus, starting a new job, making new friends, and figuring out what's next for you in your life. Embrace this time. Mark the endings appropriately. Make the most of the neutral zone and grab onto those new beginnings as you forge ahead.